Upon receiving the package, I was utterly baffled. Within was something entirely different from what I'd seen at the IKEA store. A clock with the number 13 oddly jammed between 12 and 1. I soon discovered, though, it was not a mistake. Overcoming my initial frustration, I hung the peculiar clock on the wall, evoking laughter from my girlfriend, Rhea. We found it amusing, sharing a hearty chuckle after a day's work. As we sat on the couch later, engrossed in the office, my gaze would occasionally fall on the IKEA clock. The sight of the 13 numbers awkwardly and unevenly strewn around its edge, like packed sardines in a tin, amused me. But all laughter died when the clock struck 13. Rhea vanished in an instant, followed by all the lights in our house and then in the neighborhood. Like dominoes falling one after the other, I rushed from room to room in panic, calling out for Rhea, but to no avail. After 10 agonizing minutes of searching, I ran outside. My neighborhood was submerged in darkness, and there was no sign of life, no light, no car on the road, not a soul in sight. Overwhelmed by the terrifying reality of being the sole survivor in a desolate, icy version of Earth, I began to scream. The world, I was convinced, had ended. Then, as abruptly as it started, everything returned to normal. I was back home, sitting on the couch, my head in my hands when the lights came back on. The office resumed, and to my relief, so did Rhea. The frightening hour in an apocalyptic world suddenly made sense. Time had stopped. "Are you crying because of Michael Scott?" Rhea teased. "Oh." I searched for an explanation, relieved at her sudden reappearance. "I just have a headache." I hoped it was a one-time event, but it wasn't. At work, the nightmare repeated itself. I gained an hour of time in an empty world. The office clock froze on number 1. Back home, my IKEA clock would be ticking past 13, the only object other than me that had any movement in that dimension. As I stared at the lifeless city from my office window during the silent hour, I remembered a conversation with Rhea from the day before. "I like the clock, but you've requested a replacement, right?" she asked. "Why?" "I always wanted extra hours in the day." I laughed. That sparked a memory of my encounter with Jacob, an IKEA employee I'd met during my lunch break weeks ago. "How does your delivery service work?" I asked. "Don't have enough room in your car?" Jacob asked. "It's not that," I said. "I just don't have enough time." He nodded and smiled. I used to feel the same. As I stared at the motionless city during that timeless hour, I connected the dots. Jacob had intentionally given me the clock. I had extra hours in the day, just as I jokingly asked. Despite the terror, I decided to exploit this peculiarity. I used those extra 2 hours to get work done, exercise, read, among other things. The mute, motionless world during those hours was a dreadful sight, but I saw it as the price for such a remarkable gift. The true cost, however, revealed itself after 2 years. Life had improved significantly. I was promoted to vice president at work, was in the best health of my life, always well, rested, married to Rhea, and even published a novel. My success was a spectacle to behold. But I began to notice the toll the extra hours were taking on me. I was aging rapidly, much faster than anyone else, and Rhea was beginning to notice. A deep wrinkle etched across my forehead and laugh lines had deepened. Gray streaks peppered my hair and my energy began to dwindle. In essence, I was living through days that were 26 hours long, while everyone else experienced 24-hour days. My body was aging according to the time I was living, not the time everyone else was. The panic set in when I saw a picture from our wedding, taken just a year ago. The difference was stark and terrifying. I realized the seriousness of the situation. I was aging faster than the rest of the world. The man in the photo was much younger, less haggard. Rhea was still as youthful as the day I met her, while I was showing signs of aging that were far beyond what they should be for a man in his early 30s. I finally understood the cost of my extra time. I was living more each day, but my lifespan was diminishing proportionately. Each 26-hour day was taking away my life a little faster. Suddenly, the joy of accomplishment was overshadowed by the fear of premature death. I decided to return the clock, but IKEA had no record of it. Jacob was no longer working there, and there was no way to contact him. Finally, in a desperate attempt, I removed the batteries from the clock. It worked. I returned to the normal 24-hour cycle, but my body had already aged. The years I had gained could not be taken back. I explained everything to Rhea, and after the initial shock, she was supportive. We decided to make the best of the time we had left. We moved to a small countryside town, enjoying the quiet life. Rhea took care of me, her love never wavering even as I aged prematurely. Despite the consequences, the clock gave me the time to accomplish more than I could have ever imagined. I lived each day to the fullest, savoring every moment. As I sit here, now an old man watching Rhea in our garden, I've come to understand a valuable lesson. We often wish for more time, but time is a fixed commodity. It's not about having more of it, but making the best use of what we have. Time, as it turns out, was always enough. My days were peaceful, yet filled with a certain melancholy. As Rhea bloomed like the roses in our garden, I withered, a stark contrast to her vitality. Our son, Bobby, born just a year ago, was a source of joy and sorrow. The joy lay in his infectious laughter and inquisitive eyes. The sorrow in the realization that I would not live to see him grow up. However, despite the unfortunate circumstances, I was determined to leave a lasting legacy for Bobby. I pinned down tales of my adventures, my triumphs, and my missteps. I wanted him to learn from my mistakes and understand the price I paid for tampering with time. One day, as I was watching the sun dip below the horizon, I realized that despite the drastic turn my life had taken, I wouldn't change a thing. The wisdom I had gained, the extra hours I had spent with Rhea and Bobby, the novels I had written, all came at a price. But they were worth it. After all, we all pay one way or another for the paths we choose. Mine was a life lived fully, albeit shortened. So as my time draws to an end, I hope to leave behind a cautionary tale. The allure of extra hours might be enticing, but in the grand scheme of things, we all have just enough time to live our lives. It's not about stretching time to fit our needs, but about utilizing the time we're given effectively. Despite the unusual course my life took, I found contentment in my final years. I was surrounded by love, comforted by the familiarity of home and family, and gratified by my life's accomplishments. Every evening, as the clock strikes 7, I sit by the window, watching the sun set over our little town, and I can't help but feel grateful. Time, as it turns out, was a gift that was always enough. It was never about wanting more, but about appreciating what we have. After all, time, just like life, is finite. It is not ours to manipulate, but to respect, cherish, and make the most of while we can. Because in the end, we are all in our own ways just passing through. Thank you for listening to this story till the end. We are still experimenting with this format, so your feedback is highly appreciated. Please give us your feedback by liking or disliking the content. And even better, share your thoughts in the comments, letting us know what you liked and what didn't quite resonate with you. Also, tell us what you would like to hear in the next scary story. You can vote for the comment that suggests an idea you liked the most. We write scary stories based on your requests.